Okay, it's 3 o'clock, so I'd like to welcome everyone today. Thank you for joining the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities informational webinar. Today's webinar is We're in This Together, Supports for New Programs in Submitting Florida Postsecondary Comprehensive Transition Program Applications. My name is Drew Andrews. I am the Assistant Director and Technical Assistance Coordinator at the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities. Our presenters today are Dr. Janice Seabrooks Blackmore, Executive Director and Professor at the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities, and Claudia Bellapunto, Web Applications Developer at the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities, both the University of Central Florida. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website under the Events tab for your review at a later date or to share with someone who is unable to attend today. The PowerPoint and other handouts can be downloaded from the chat box over on, it's on my right. And if you aren't familiar with the chat box, simply go to the bottom of your window where Zoom is open. Click on the chat icon and a chat box will open and you'll see that materials have been posted there. If you're having difficulty or your internet connection, it has difficulty, you can also join via phone, and we're going to put some phone numbers in the chat box also that you can call in and listen to the webinar and follow along on the PowerPoint slides. At the end of the webinar, you will be directed to our evaluation. Please complete so we will have your input when planning future webinars. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Janice Seabrooks Blackmore.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. See some familiar faces, and thank you for being in this together with us as we really are going to address the applications process that is in our new portal. And although we will be primarily talking about new applications, the information we will also refer to the renewal applications. Some of our existing programs may be interested in that. So at any point during this presentation, please ask questions. Although we have questions at the end, we'll be happy to answer questions throughout. And this is a FCSUA team presentation. So we'll have a little of Vanna in the presentation with Claudia doing demonstrations as I talk. And so bear with us as we move back and forth through screens, and please feel free to ask any questions. And some of you who are joining us today may be familiar with the process and may have some additional input as we move along. So feel free to ask and interject throughout the presentation. I'll share my screen. We've been working with this online portal, actually with a company to get us ready for this online portal for a little over a year, and we're excited. And this is really part two. In March, Dr. Paula Kohler gave an introduction of some updates related to actually submitting applications and grants. And today our focus will only be on applications. And as it would be with any virtual format, of course, there are glitches, and so we're working through those, and we appreciate all of you who are bearing with us as we move through it, but we're excited about this new place. And isn't it appropriate for this time where everything is remote? So we're happy to be moving along. So generally, we're going to talk about the new applications. We are going to talk a little bit about our Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program requirements and the supplemental materials that'll be needed to go along with the application. And then we'll go through a demonstration of actually using the portal. And as we go through using the portal, we won't go through every single aspect of it, but it will be available. And again, for those of you who are familiar with the portal, you may have a question, and those of you who see the components, but you will see all the components and we can ask about those. Our Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs have a huge focus in front, and that is employment outcomes. We are looking at not only students with intellectual disabilities attending post-secondary institutions, they have that post-secondary experience with like peers. What we are also interested in looking at, and the legislation's goal is for employment outcomes to be a primary focus. So that's very key to the Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs. In addition to that, these are not special ed programs on institutions' campuses. And by institutions, these are all post-secondary institutions, career ed centers, career ed and tech centers, state colleges, and our universities. When our programs are on, all of our programs that are on these campuses are inclusive in nature. That means that our students are not segregated all of the time that they're there, that they are integrated as much as possible in those institutions in which our programs are housed. The students at those institutions must attend no less than half time. So as we look, there are some programs that we have where students are attending full-time, but they cannot attend less than half-time. And so that's a pretty significant part of when we think about our students participating in the FPCTPs. All of our programs address meaningful credentials that could lead to industry certification. So we work with institutions to identify credentials that, again, has an employment focus. And so the credentials should mean something to future employers of employability. So that is very important. Those students who, since they're receiving scholarships from our Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs through the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities, they must maintain satisfactory academic progress. And so each institution has managed their satisfactory academic progress based on how the current institution does theirs. So there may be some modification in thinking about working with adults with intellectual disabilities, but they must maintain satisfactory academic progress in order to continue to receive a $7,000 scholarship. And that's for every participant who attends one of these programs. In addition to all of our FPCTPs, they're Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs, but they also must become federal comprehensive transition and post-secondary programs. And that then allows students to receive financial aid at the federal level with Pell Grants and supplemental education grants. While we have 14 institutions and rising, by the end of this semester, we should have about 16 post-secondary institutions who are approved programs. We do have other institutions across the state, as many of you know, who also serve students with intellectual disabilities. And this is just a map across the state of Florida where you see the programs in the state of Florida. You'll notice we're all over the state. And those that are in black on the map are our institutions that are approved programs. There are also other institutions who are working with them, and many of the ones that you see in black were also yellow once upon a time. And so we're happy that they're transitioning over to become Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs, because it does lead to additional funding. But this map is on our website. And of course, there's additional information that goes along with it. We have lots of territory to cover. So we're looking for lots of new applications. Now, when we're thinking about our the application process, when we think about new applications, we do accept applications year-round. And so at any point in time that you and a team of colleagues and stakeholders at your institution are interested in starting a program, it can happen anytime. The application information is available online. And so there's no particular time frame in which we actually approve or admit institutions. And so when you apply, the first round is 3 years of approval. So becoming an approved post-secondary comprehensive transition program has a 3-year window. And during that time, there's lots of support that occurs during that time, along with our technical support. But another part that we won't dwell on today is also grant support that certainly help the implementation of the program on your institution's campus. After 3 years, we have institutions who are interested in continuing that process. So they will resubmit a renewal application and have 5 years. So you have 3 at the beginning and then 5 if you want to renew. And those grant opportunities remain with you for a 3-year time frame. When you apply, a lot of times institutions are ready to brainstorm, start laying the groundwork with advertisement, getting their campuses ready. If you become an approved program through the center, you'll have a year to become a fully implemented program. So sometimes institutions like to get a start and not at the moment, a start to kind of identify their students, to get their campuses ready, talk with stakeholders, get everything in place, and then fully admit students within 1 year of being approved. Also, within a year after you have full implementation, you also have to apply for that federal status. So a lot of institutions think that you have to get that status right away, and some start it once we approve them, but within a year after being approved, you can move towards. Your application will be approved at the Florida Center for Students with Unique Ability. You'll notice at the top that regardless of what type of institution you are, whether you're a university, state college, or career tech center, the approval process begins in the center. And once you are approved in the center, then for those who are universities, your application is moved at the state level to the Board of Governors. And then ultimately, when we look at making sure that our Board of Governors approve it, and then our final looking at Commissioner of Education. The same is true for state colleges, that you will have your application comes through the center, then it'll go to our Chancellor of the colleges, Division of Colleges, and then on to the Commissioner. The Career Tech Centers, it'll go through the Career Tech Centers after FUSUA has approved it, to the Chancellor of Career Tech Education, Adult Ed, and then on to the Commissioner. So all of these would become state-approved programs after FCSUA has also approved those programs. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about the application content. Some of you probably have already downloaded the applications that can be found on our website, but generally these are the areas. We want to know, how are you going to recruit students with intellectual disabilities? And I want to say before going on that with each one of these areas, if you ever run into a glitch as a new program, our team is ready to answer questions. We also refer you to our other institutions who are currently approved. And we definitely are always in this together. So everyone shares and does everything that's possible to make sure that you have a quality application that can be moved forward. So how will you recruit those students? Thinking about the relationships you have with school systems within the community and so forth. And then you have to think about how you admit them. So your university or state college or career tech center has an admission process where you follow the same thing. And if you do, then what kind of recruitment materials will you have in order for those students whom you're actually targeting know that your program is unique at that institution? Assessment is a key part to knowing whether or not we're carrying out everything properly. So we want to know how you will assess in many ways, in just identifying who can be eligible students for your institution and helping students determine a program of study, and then actually fine-tuning a program of study. And so all of the institutions write according to that and start thinking about that. Advising. We have several of our institutions who advise in the same way that their current institution do. However, there's another layer for many. So advising may be different. Credentialing, as we talked about early on, with having an employment focus, is part of the application. You really have to think about, what are we good at? What makes us stand out? What do we have in our current offerings that we can look at to carve out for this group of individuals who can really help enhance employment opportunities? And so this is a tough area for some institutions. In some cases, there may not be anything that you could think of right away, but we and other institutions can help you think about what will be the credential that students exit with as they leave your institution and on into employment. Of course, you have to think about the scope and sequence of your curriculum. How will it be set up? What's going to happen from beginning to the end? How do students come in through? How do they exit? And in many cases, institutions write out how they will start through internship or exiting, but giving an idea of the courses, the experiences, the level of support that students would get during that time. And so you'll see in our portal just general questions to kind of help you shape that, as well as in the application. We remember that our students have to be no more than less than half-time enrollment. So we want to know, how do you define that? What is that? Because again, they're receiving financial aid. And so we want to know, how is that defined? Because when they're not at that, what are the exceptions in that case? Or maybe students are not participating in the program in given terms. And that would be something that we would look at. Inclusive settings, I think that's pretty obvious. How will you decide that would be? It will not be, students will be in their special program courses all day, and maybe they'll go to lunch with their peers whenever. It has to be an integration in courses, and we'll look at some of what those different options are. Partnerships. Can't do it without a team, your team, and the partnerships really look at what employment partnerships are out there and opportunities, because if we're going to focus on employment being the primary, a big outcome for our students, we have to have a lot of relationships out there and have to be unique in thinking about the way that we carve out employment readiness and actual employment implementation. So the partnerships will be a part that you'll elaborate on. And of course, since this is state appropriated funds, you know, there's always something. It starts off really super good, and we always wish that it continue that way. But we also want to know, as well as our state legislation, how are you going to sustain your program? When our funding is no longer available, what will the institution commit to in making sure that this program stays? Any questions at this time before I go on? Okay. And so you have those parts in the application that we're going to look at, but we also have some additional stuff in making sure that your application is complete. Now, this is new that came out this year, a new requirement that when you apply as a new program, you must have evidence that your board, your governing board, is in agreement with this program existing. You're going to have an agenda item, or maybe chair of your board, some kind of action item. We will need evidence of that. Our state level colleagues have asked that we have evidence that your governing board has approved the Florida Postsecondary Comprehensive Transition Program. And we've had a little confusion with this, that it is not about anything but approval, but for the program. And so keep that in mind, that the program is what we're asking the board to approve. You'll also have a letter that is from your CEO, your president, your superintendent, who is in agreement of the program existing on your campus, with evidence of when the governing board actually met and approved that the program is an approved, they agree for the program to be on your institution's campus. And so that level of commitment is critically important, particularly when we look at sustainability. Now for applicants, for programs who are currently approved programs, they have also a new requirement if they're doing a renewal. They too have to have approval from their governing board. In their case, they have to have approval that the institution will continue to support them. So when their letters are written, they have a letter from their president or CEO saying, yes, we would like to continue to support this program. And then evidence from their governing board that this was presented to the board, and the board said, yes, we'd like to continue to support the FPCTP. And so those two are new requirements that when we think about all applications, it must be included. And this kind of summarized with that supplemental information that every institution must have, that whether new or renewing. And so that one is one that we get quite a few calls on for clarification. Also, remember you have a year after your program is in operation. In the portal, we'll see where you get to choose. You don't have to have that right away, but you have to indicate whether or not you're applying for that. You've submitted an application, but we want the institutions to keep in mind that that federal CTP is critically important. And so within a year after your program is up and running, you need to have evidence and submit your letter of approval from the federal level that your Florida Postsecondary Comprehensive Transition Program has actually been approved at the federal level. Also, your accrediting body. What has your accrediting body said about approval? So all along, you can see that each and every step is not just the president's word, it's not just your governing board's word, but we've had your accrediting body's word that your program is approved. We've also had the federal government level approval, so the national approval. And that's pretty awesome, I think, in making sure that your program remains sustainable. So what do we do? I mean, you may be jumping, for those of you who have not submitted an application or who are not an approved program, you may be jumping about, okay, what do I do? What do I need to do? And so first thing would be requesting access to the portal. So you would be requesting, sending an email to our FCSUA's email, requesting that you have a site on our portal. Now that doesn't happen automatically, but we do get your request, and many, oftentimes after our webinars, sometimes institutions send a request and ask what we need to do. And we work with you to make sure we walk you through that. But you can request a site on our portal. And by doing that, you need to send us an email. And once we have established a site on the portal, you will get a welcome email. And that welcome email, we try not to have too much information, but it would definitely have instructions about what you need to do and how you need to do it. And oftentimes we get technical assistance heavy on the front end as people are going through and learning how to interface with that platform, with the Salesforce platform that we use. One note with that last bullet, and that is always start with the Word file. In other words, that application that's on our website, begin filling that in. That is your backup, that is your guarantee, because what we've informed and found with our current institutions who are in the portal is that it's critical that you have that information. Once you have it in your Word document, you can copy and paste it into the portal. And so that makes it a little easier. Instead of trying to maneuver through the portal as you go through, you have that documentation now. We'll see that once we get in the portal, it's a little different. And so we have to think about, we have a Word document that has absolutely all of the information, and in some cases a lot more flexibility than the portal, but we also must have everything in the portal. When our portal is in perfect shape, we're going to be so happy to be able to generate our files in the way that we like. And so right now we're saying, please make sure you start with that Word document. And I have to cough a minute, so excuse me. Okay. When we get into the portal, most of the content is prepared in the portal, but you will have your Word document and you will copy and paste it in there because that is the safest way. The supplemental information can be uploaded, the supplemental materials we talked about. Sorry. They will be uploaded and you can use various types. As you see, you can use Word files, you can use PDFs, and you can upload Excel files. What we've learned in the portal is when we think about our Word document, again, our Word documents in this case can be a little more flexible because in our Word documents, it's easy to put a table right after our content. Well, in the portal, that doesn't happen so well. And so we often ask that when you're in the portal to reference your tables, and you certainly will upload your tables in the with the supplemental materials, but the tables do not transfer into the portal. So you want to be, well, you want to know that up front. Because I've seen applications where they have beautiful tables and then we have to upload those instead of put them in the portal. And once you've uploaded the information, entered the information in the portal, you will receive email notifications about the status. And we're going to look at what some of that language is before we enter the portal. And you'll have this to review and look at again, but just want to be clear that you'll get an email to update you. Sorry. I think I need to take a drink of water. So excuse me. I've been keeping my vitamin C in me, hoping that I just stay strong. I hope the same is true for all of you. Again, the basic application for the new renewal and the new application are the same. There's going to be a few differences. With our renewal application, folks will summarize some of the program changes. That makes sense. If they have been in place for 3 years, then what are some changes? What lessons have you learned? What are some thoughts that you know could really be better? And so we want to know what changes you'll make. Additionally, what have you learned on some of the outcomes? And that's a boastful part. Over the 3-year period of time, there's been plenty of outcomes and lots of information you want to brag about. So these 2 areas are really, under the program history, are really substantiating why do you need to be on a continuous approved program. So you want to put some into explaining your program history to give not only us at the center a great picture of whom you are, but when it goes to our state level, we may have had a change in staff and people not aware of everything that you do. So we want it to be a very clear picture about what your history has been and use it as a pretty much of a bragging right. And then certainly everyone wants to see what your outcomes have been. As we get ready to go into the portal, just a few other things, and that is key things you want to keep in mind. You have an institutional profile and contacts. If you do not complete that, and that'll be part of your instructions, you can't enter an application. And so we'll look at what that is in a minute. But your institutional contacts are key. And in that, some institutions change a lot as well. So you want to make sure that those contacts are current and up to date. And once you get a site, you'll be able to go back in and update as needed. So keep in mind that you must always get this, in order to get moving, you have to get this institutional contact information up. In the portal, you'll see there's an application. There'll be a place for grants, scholarships, annual reports, and always contact us. Our focus today is only on applications, so that is where we'll keep, that is what we'll actually demonstrate. So when you first log in, this is what it will look like. And so you'll have a better picture. And again, once we get into the website, Claudia is going to walk us through that. We'll demonstrate and talk through those areas. But this is a picture of what it's going to look like when you actually have a site on the portal. And you see right away that you have to fill in institutional information. So you will not be able to go past this until you have those contacts in there. So keep that in mind. And also, we'll look at these buttons. These buttons will be at the bottom of the screen and in the portal. And we've had to clarify what these buttons mean. And so with these buttons, the save button, the save means, hey, we're not finished. We would like to continue working through it. And don't bother us right now, but we're working through it. The submit draft for FCSUA review means we have completed all of our changes, and we would like for you to give us some of your feedback. And then the other button, submit for FCSUA approval, we've been working with you for a few weeks and or a few months. You've gotten all your supplemental information ready, and you want us to now look at it and approve it. And so that's like my final paper. I'm ready for that grade of A. Take it away, and of course close. And I know you may have to review that. So again, you have those submission buttons, and these are the status, which you might see in the portal. Again, if you save it, that means you want it at the draft status, and in the portal, it'll show as draft. And that just means to us, don't bother it. But then you may have draft under review, and you're looking for feedback. Warning, warning, you cannot do anything at this stage. So when you submit and you see the status is draft under review, unless you want us to release it, we are now in the process of reviewing your application to give you feedback. So you cannot go in and do anything other than you can always upload documents. Okay. So you can always upload documents, but at that point, if your status shows that it's under review, you cannot do any changes in the application. We'll look at your application and we'll send back a notification, and the status will show updates needed. And so we have sections which we'll take a look at in the portal where we will place comments. And in the instructions, it will tell you, please go into the comment sections and read each one and make those changes. And by the way, you're making those changes on the Word document. That is, if you're planning on submitting an application in the next month or so, on that Word document and in the portal. You want to make sure they're pretty consistent, because that's what we are doing. We're going back and forth, looking at your latest version of the Word document and looking at what's in the portal. So it's kind of like, you know how you track changes on a Word document? Instead of doing it on the Word document, we're doing it in the portal. Okay. And then you say, okay, well, you know, we are pretty good about all of our changes. We've had your help and your feedback, and we are great. We're ready to submit. It is perfect. And so you said, I'm going to submit it to FUSUA for approval, and then the status will show submitted to FCSUA to us. That means go in and they are ready for approval. I do want to let you know, if we have questions, we can always go back to the updates needed, even though you've submitted, and then we can go right back to, you can go right back to submit to FCSUA. So that's a good place to be actually when we're in the submitted to FCSUA and there are updates needed. We just do some light tweaking. Once we have looked at your application, and after that, we will send you an email. If it's not updates needed, the next notification will say submitted for state approval. And that way we are getting your document ready to send it on to state level. Now you may hear back from us because we may need your electronic signature in the PDF file, but that's okay. We are done with changes. We are getting the application camera ready to send to our colleagues at the state level. And then once we hear back from our colleagues at the state level saying you are good, then we send it to you and everyone else who are remotely interested. Not just kidding, but to all of the colleagues, your presidents, your superintendent, whomever is involved in at the higher administration level, of course, your program coordinators. We will send back that, yay, the state has approved you. And so we move on, and then the gates just open up for you. So I guess we're ready to go in the portal. Any questions? So Claudia, would the best thing be for me to go ahead and click in there and then you take over the screen?
Yes.
The IPR backend has two servers. She was only communicating with one. So I reached out to Jared and I want we have any type of no file.
Okay, no, let's do it differently. So I will share mine.
Okay.
So it's easier for me. There you go. Hello, everyone. Okay. So are you able to see my screen?
I see it.
Perfect. So, so this is what Janice was trying to refer to. This is the first view that you will have once you log in the portal for the first time. Some of the institutions actually send the information about the institution, but in some cases you don't, or if you send it, we will enter it for you. But anyways, we want you to confirm that the information and the data that we have about the institution is current. So this is the first thing that you will do. In this case, in order to demonstrate, we create a fake institution. It's called webinar, and we're going to enter the information. So it will be the address. The address, we'll do website, phone number. We'll do FCSUA website, and we'll do our main line. 823. So once we have all the information, we click save, and it will actually take us to the roles. Because we're talking today about the application, the first thing that needs to happen is when you request your access, you send us the information about the institution, but you also let us know who is going to be the primary program contact. So who is the person that's going to actually log in into the portal, who's going to enter the application, who's going to have access. And we will set up the information for the institution and for this person to log in. But once you're in here and you have confirmed the information about your institution, one role that is required for you in order to go to the application process is the institution president. So the next thing that you have to do is, if you're going to work in your application, you will enter the information about the president of your institution. So that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to have Yum webinar. So it's going to be and we're going to have an email address So as you can see here, we have some other roles that are related to the other components of the portal that will come in soon. For example, the financial aid, because at some point you will be requesting also scholarships through portal. And if you're going to work on your grant proposal, you will also need all the roles related to the grant proposal process. But to enter the information related to the application, you just need to enter the information about the president. So we save. And at this point, we finish down here because we're just going to work on the application. It tells you, yeah, you still have some to enter, but we're good now. So once you have your institutional profile, as Janice mentioned, you can always come back here. You can always come back to your institutional profile tab and edit the information about your institution. Same thing with your contacts. You can always update the contact and change the roles or enter a new person if that's the case. So that's something that you can, as a primary program contact, the person having access to the portal, they can always do that. So once you're ready to work on your application, you go to the FPCTP applications tab up here. And as you first log in, you won't have anything here. So you click new right here. And this is what you will see, right? You were going there. The first step will be click here. So here are the application instructions and the institutional responsibilities that come with all the approval process. So the first thing for you, in order to enter the information on the sections, because these fields are actually locked until you click on this link and you walk, and you read through the instructions. So once you're done reading your instructions, you close that and it actually goes back to you, and now your fields are active and you can start filling up the information about the application.
Okay. Now, will I be able to go into that to walk through those components, Claudia?
Let's go back. Yeah, you can do that. And what you have to do is go directly to the applications and just do a new one. I will stop sharing.
So go to the application. Make sure I'm going right. Click on and so bear with me, folks, just making sure I got the right thing. Oh, I have a message that I need to add required information.
Yeah, that's because it's asking you about the grant role, the grants. Yeah, but you can go to the FPCTP applications tab.
Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Make it bigger. Everyone can see.
Then here's the other question.
So I can go straight to the application and go to new. And so now I'm in the webinar institution. That's the name of this one. And as Claudia said, you've already read the information. And that'll be pretty important. Again, this information is on the website, so you'll be able to do that on the website as well. It's taking a minute, so I won't. It's the same thing. Okay. I'll go back here. So you'll notice a drop-down menu over to the right. You're going to choose that you are new FPCTP or a renewal, that you'll get an opportunity to do that. And so the interesting thing is, if you choose that you are new, if you remember the programs that are choosing renewal, they have that program history section that they must do. Whereas with the new ones, they don't. So I'll just scroll down a little bit, and I know some of our people are sensitive to moving screens, so I'll try to move them slowly. But if you're new, you will have section 1 and you will not have section 1A. So you have section 1 here. Let me show you what happens if it's a renewal. Now with the renewal, can everybody see that change? You now have a section 1A. And section 1A now asks you about that program history, and it asks about the evaluation and data outcome. So that is one of the differences when we look at new and renewal applications. Depending on your choice, and that'll be important as we go through the portal, depending on your choice, some things will be available to you, whereas others won't. And what if you choose the wrong thing? I don't think you will with this, whether it's new or renewal, but in some cases you might choose the wrong thing. You can always make a correction. So I'll go back to new, since that's our emphasis. And here, the information that Claudia included for the institutional profile is here. You'll notice that all of that has already loaded in, and you'll need to, again, make sure that it's complete and updated. And as I go slowly, if there's any questions, let me know. Here's a key part. When we look at number 5, what if there's someone other than the person who's preparing this application, and in most cases it could be, we call them, you all call each other the program coordinator or the director, and it's someone other than the president, or who else might we have to work in this portal? And so we need to know who that other contact would be. And so here you would say, yeah, actually we do have another person, because maybe the director and maybe the program coordinator, depending on how you structure your program, may be the 2 people who will actually be going into the portal and be the contact persons with whom we work with. So you might have somebody else that you will add. If you say yes, of course, it's going to ask for information for that person. And this is because we're in a platform where if the platform doesn't identify this contact person, communication might be hindered when they try to log in and actually enter information. So if you know there's going to be another person, you need to include that person. Here, if it's no, it's just no, and you move on. So if it's no, you don't have a question asking you about anybody else. Now you'll notice that some of these are the same areas that I showed you on the PowerPoint earlier that we ask about, starting with student eligibility. Now the nice thing about most of these text boxes, they can go on and on and on and on and on. So don't think you're limited to what you see, because more information can go in there. And I'm emphasizing that because when you copy and paste from your Word document, you may have a pretty substantial response. For example, in describing how you would do your recruitment, and you look at this space and think it can't expand, but it can. So it will expand. And we've even, in a few cases, you might have a little underline, little red underline to let you know that some of the spelling is incorrect, but not in all cases. So you'll want to make sure you use that Word document for spell check. But so you have who are your recruitment efforts, and you're generally telling us, how are you going to recruit? Just like I said, who are your partners? What's the process for recruiting? And notice it says describe. So that's exactly what we want you to do. We don't want you to just list. Step 1, step 2, describe it, talk to us, make a narrative. And again, you're not just talking to us, you're talking to our state level colleagues. Now, all of the participants in the program must be 18 or older. They must be a person who has been identified with an intellectual disability. Each institution determines, how will we know that this is an eligible student? How do we know that they have exited high school, they're 18 years or older, and they have an intellectual disability? What kind of documentation will we seek? And we have institutions that seek, they may use the former IEP, They may use the IPE from Voc Rehab. They may use a physician's recent diagnosis. What evidence do you have to say that this is indeed an eligible participant for our programs? Also, institutions put other things. They don't just put the eligibility requirement for intellectual disability. They think about other things that might be important to determine this is an eligible student and a goodness of fit. So we ask, how are you going to make a decision about who gets admitted? We have some institutions who have 50 or more applications. How do you decide who's going to come in? And so oftentimes there's a group of people or an individual who looks at eligibility, makes a decision about that, and a committee who makes a decision about this is how we decide the number of applicants and who can enter. Now, we are interested in how many students you're planning on serving. And so each institution is different. You actually have to think about what is the capacity. We have some institutions who admit 20. We have some institutions who admit 6. You think about what is the capability of your institution and the maximum of what you want to do each year. What is that capacity? So keep that in mind. Here's a look at the assessment information, just as we kind of bulleted on the PowerPoint. Again, how do you know who's going to enter? How do you assess? How do you find out the student's interest? Every one of our programs identify the student's interests and skills and preferences to see how that works with their program. And so for some institutions, there are a lot of options, and for others, there's not so many. Again, the advising structure. I'm going to go through the program information because this is an area where we have a lot of institutions or spend a great deal of time. And so when we look at the drop-down menu here, it asks, are you a new program that serves students with intellectual disabilities specifically? Are you existing program? Like we know, we have some institutions out there who are serving students with intellectual disabilities, and they are not a FPCTP. So then you will choose, which one are you? We also ask, when do you want to admit students? That's important. Remember, after approval, you have within a year that you can look at, we want to submit along that time frame. And then it just looks at how many will you admit each over 3 years. Remember, this is the initial application is a 3-year application. And so how many do you anticipate admitting during each one of those years? I think, Drew, we're gonna have to have part 3. I mean, it's always so comprehensive. As we go through, I see we have about 6 minutes. And so I wanna leave time for questioning, but on this, here's a big question, everybody. Think about this. Where will your program be housed? Is it going to be in a department? Is that gonna be the oversight unit? Is it going to be outside of that in continuing ed? We don't tell programs where they need to house their program, but where does the program belong? And each one of our institutions have various places. Our career and tech ed centers, theirs are pretty easy for the most part. They're all in the school district because they're part of the school district. But when we start thinking about our state colleges and our universities, something else comes up, and that's why we have other. So that's a big one when you're working with your colleagues and thinking about applying for this program. Where's the oversight of this program going to be housed? And we actually have one of our programs that share responsibilities. So you have to think about the structure of where this program will actually exist. And then the last part that I'll take a look at is number 8. Is this going to be a program where you have just a credential when they exit? There are no additional pathways. There are no other concentrations. And if you're interested, you can go to our website and you can look at our last annual report, and you will find in our appendix that our institutions have various opportunities for students across the state. Some just have one credential. They exit with a professional credential that will lead to employment. That's option number one. Your choices change depending on what you choose. If you choose one, you see the selection of questions that go. Okay. Option two, you may have a credential, but you also have various concentrations that they can pursue. And so it's sort of like thinking about when you major in something, and then, but you can major in other areas under that broad credential. And then the third one is where many of our career tech ed centers are, where they specifically enter a career tech ed program and go from there. And those are some ride opportunities. But we do want to know within all of those, what are the types of credentials that you provide to students? Are there some micro credentials? How long does it take? Is that in addition to your overall exiting? So this part, number 4, is huge and requires a lot of deep thinking about what is it that we're going to offer and what will that structure be. And I know we have 3 minutes left, and I don't know if there are any questions, but it's a lot, and our staff is here to assist every day. So we are available to assist and provide support in whatever way you need. Some of our colleagues who are on the call know that we make visits. Well, once travel restrictions are lifted, we can make personal visits, working with you and your staff. So you will let us know to what level that you actually need our support. I think it's something in the chat room, Drew, I'm not sure.
Well, we have someone that has said, thank you, Janice. And we're going to post the evaluation, but the chat room is open for questions. Or if you just simply move your cursor over your picture and click on your picture, it will say unmute, and you can unmute yourself and be able to just speak verbally. Or if you'd like to use the chat box, you can certainly write a question in the chat box.
Glad you guys are here. Thank you. Have to spread the word and make it happen. Even in these uncertain times, we're doing it together. Any questions, Drew?
No, I don't. If you see the evaluation link there, it's a bit.ly address. If you could complete the evaluation, I'll also be emailing out the evaluation link tomorrow morning to everyone that registered for the webinar today. And we'll also be sharing the PowerPoint presentation with you also. If there are any questions, if you would like to type those in the chat box, you're welcome to it this time.
Well, on behalf of the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities team, we are so happy that you and your families are safe and healthy, and we wish you good health and safety for the rest of the new year, for the rest of the year, for the rest of the new whatever we are, and look for your applications and questions, and we are on standby to support you in any other way. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm going to put my email address in the chat box. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Technology has made working remotely Really, well, there's nothing lacking. I mean, we've been very, very, very busy. And so, we're happy to help you any step of the way as you move through this process. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. It's taken us a while to become familiar with this new portal and the process, but it works really well as we're moving through it. And we're happy to guide you through that process also and provide you support.
Be safe, everybody. And thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today.
Bye-bye.